Welcome to the Tom Heck for Governor Digital Town Hall. Drop into the group chat and join the conversation. This is your chance to get to know Tom, make a comment, or ask him anything you want to know about his plans as the next governor of Nevada. And Tom will take your comments and your questions and answer them live. If you'd like to join the Tom Heck team as a volunteer, to make a donation, or both, please visit electheck.com. Now, without any further ado, let's get the show rolling. Welcome to the Tom Heck for Governor Digital Town Hall.
And welcome, everybody. My name is Tim Kramer. I'm with Tom Heck tonight, and we are doing our last Monday night live digital town hall for the primary. Tom Heck is running for governor in the state of Nevada. And Tom, why don't you tell everybody that's joining us tonight why you're running? Why was it so important for you to come out of retirement and jump into politics?
Well, first and foremost, career politicians have failed us for over 40 years. In Nevada, we're in the bottom of almost every national ranking that we have. But more importantly, I saw that the list of candidates that we have out there just didn't have the ability to do this job. And we needed someone strong, tough, and tested who has leadership skills and the background in running bureaucracies to move this bureaucracy forward in Nevada so that we can take care of people where they live, work, and play.
Well, that sounds like a big thing to have to to promise coming in. So let's talk about these career politicians. I've had the opportunity over the last few months being here in Nevada with you to talk to some of them. And it's interesting when you ask them what their largest or biggest accomplishment is, what they're most proud of getting done while in office. It seems to be the stadium for the Raiders in Las Vegas. If they were to ask you, you're in your third or fourth year as governor, and someone were to ask you that question, what are you most proud of? What would you want to say at that point that you've accomplished? Would it have anything to do with the stadium?
No, that doesn't do anything for Nevadans. I mean, it costs them money for hotel taxes and for rental car taxes. What I want to be able to say at the end of my 4-year term is that we moved from 50th in education to in the top 10 for education. That's what I would like to say. Then that's my goal for Nevada, because we cannot force to mortgage our children's future any longer. We've done it for over 40 years. It's time to take our children's future back and give them the skills, education, and knowledge that they need to be successful in life to raise a family on their own.
So for 40 years, they've been doing the exact same thing. I call it I call it planting the wrong seeds and planting seeds and expecting a different crop, right? Planting beans and expecting to get corn. If you plant career politicians, what are you going to get? The same thing that career politicians give you over and over and over again. So Tom, talk about your process in coming into leadership in the state of Nevada. What your plan would be to change the culture. How do you change the culture in such a big system?
Well, first and foremost, you fire the top 3 layers of leadership. That's the only way you can immediately change the culture. And people say, well, you can't do that. Well, yeah, I can do that. And the problem is right now, Nevadans aren't getting their money's worth from their tax dollars. So I'm going to fire the top 3 layers of leadership. We're going to do a 10% budget cut. And we're going to get a vision and goals and objectives that focus state employees on providing services that our taxpayers deserve and pay for.
One of the things that you've talked about time and time again is setting goals and setting critical success factors. Talk about how important that is in state leadership and getting things done.
Well, in big bureaucracies and organizations, it's oftentimes people have a hard time focusing on what's important. So when you go into an organization, by focusing on those things that are really, really important to the success of a program, what I call the critical success factors, allows you to focus on things that really are important. And then you begin with that effort, you work with each department to develop their list. And then you have them develop an action list for those that are falling short of their desired outcomes. And so it becomes a laundry list or an action list from A through Z of things that they have to do to fix that critical success factor and bring it to the standards that's needed. The other piece of it is you ultimately, when you do the critical success factors, you also look at strength, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities, and you optimize those for each one so that you are really honing in on what's going to make that program successful and what's going to make that program responsive to the voters and Nevadans.
Well, part of that, what you're talking about is let's talk about education. What you're talking about, let's apply that to the education process here in the state of Nevada. It's been in 50th place or ranked around 50th for the last 40 years. The state passed an additional bill or passed a bill where they spent an additional 40% more dollars on the educational system here in the state of Nevada, and it didn't do anything. They're still in last place. As governor, how would you resolve that? What's your day one process?
Well, day one process is first and foremost, that day one is November 9th after the election, to go around the country and find the best possible person to run the Department of Education, and then stop the Department of Education from abdicating its responsibility for holding the school districts accountable. And what that looks like is, I've talked before many times, you don't send your child to the store to buy some groceries for you without giving them a list. You give them some money, but that's not where it stops. It stops when they come home and you look at what they bought, what money they returned, and what they spent the money on. Well, that's going to happen under my administration in Nevada. We're going to work with the school districts at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we're going to work with them on what their funding needs are. But only funding needs are going to be given that are tied to goals and objectives.
Well, explain.
And then those funding needs will also be required.
We'll explain that for a second. So when you say that these funding initiatives will only be tied to the goals and initiatives, what do you mean by that?
Well, for instance, you do something that says improve child learning. Well, that's kind of generic. So you look at, well, what does that look like? Well, improve test scores on this particular test from 70 to 90%. That's the particular goal. And then the big outcome from the big picture national ranking is improve the national ranking by improving student learning. And then you focus at the objective level with the schools to identify those things that will move us out of where we are, but to make sure the schools are accountable for where they spend the money. Right now, they're not accountable. They spend the money willy-nilly wherever they want, and then they can lose funds. How do you lose $60 million? I mean, right. As you mentioned earlier, in the last 8 years, we have 40% more money in the school systems, and we spend the same amount on our children as Florida, and they're ranked number 3. It's not a money problem; it's an accountability. And I'm going to bring accountability, and that piece is at the end of the fiscal year. I'm going to sit down with the school systems and look at their goals and objectives, and look where they spent the money. And if they didn't achieve any of their goals and objectives and spend the money properly, we're going to pull the money the following year. Well, they're not going to do that for very long.
Well, Tom, one of the things that comes up, we've talked about this time and time again, and every time that we talk about it, the voters ask one question over and over and over again. They say, well, you say stuff like, I want to institute accountability. How do you do that? How do you get accountability into a system this big?
Well, it all starts, as we talked about. You have to have outcomes that you're achieving. In other words, in Nevada, we want to improve the outcomes for our children. Right now, only 28% of our children are proficient in science. Only 19% are proficient in math. I mean, it's criminal, and only 13% are ready for college. We look at those as metrics, or as I would call objectives, and we want to improve those numbers. We want to get to at least 75%. Maybe in the short term it's 50, but ultimately we want to get to 75%. But it's focusing on those particular outcomes and on those particular tests, or whatever manner we choose to measure it by.
Well, so let me ask you this. So when it comes to the educational system, and not only the educational system in the state, but when it comes to dealing with these type of departments, do you see, is your style of management one that would be where you go in and you carry both a big stick, right? What is it? Walk softly with a big stick, but as well as a carrot on the end of that, that there's accountability on one end, but you can also be rewarded for helping the system become smaller, lowering cost and so on. Is that something that you would propose or go to the legislature?
Well, absolutely. What Governor Walker did in Wisconsin was he basically gave the top tiered teachers a 10% raise. So you reward that behavior. But there's a saying that goes, "He who controls the money controls the outcome." So if I can't get the school districts to do my bidding, we're going to cut the money, and then if necessary, we're going to put the kids in the schools that are performing. And so we're going to measure each school and their success rate of improving children learning. And for those that don't, it may get to the point where they'll fail, and we'll shut them down. And I'm going to push this school voucher that's funded as hard as I possibly can in the first year, and at least get it prepared for a referendum so that we can have it on the ballot, so parents can vote on having a choice for their children. And when they have a choice, money follows the child. If the schools don't perform, They shut down the schools. Exactly. That's the stick. He who controls the money controls the outcome. As governor, I control the money.
The NSEA, which is the union for teachers here in the state of Nevada, it's interesting that they didn't endorse any Republicans at all. Not a single Republican in the state. Do you see that as a problem?
Well, as you know, I filled out that survey for the NSEA, and it was interesting. All the questions were about raising teachers' salary and cooperating with the NSEA. Well, why would you cooperate with an organization that have led you down the beaten path to 50th in the nation? They need to cooperate with me, and we've got to get us out of 50th in the nation. It has to be focused on children's learning, and children's learning. And when they finally get that through their head, then there's going to be remedial needs for the teachers. There's going to be remedial student needs. It may be that we have one summer where all the children go to summer school, especially those that are behind. So no, we can't allow this to continue to happen and let the teacher. All these other career politicians, they're afraid of the teachers union. I'm happy to partner with them when they come to me and tell me how they're going to help me improve children learning, but I'm not talking about anything else.
Right.
Ain't going to happen.
Right. And that's what the Tom Heck campaign, that's what the Tom Heck governorship administration intends on doing, is revolutionizing state government. Speaking of revolutionizing state government and still keeping within the realm of education, it's amazing that a ton of the solutions that we've heard so far from career politicians and some of the wannabes who want to be governor, for example, their solution to the educational problem in the state of Nevada is still rooted in 20th century technology. They haven't moved on to think about how they can utilize today's technology to come to that end. Tom, what would you do, or what would you propose in this area?
Well, there's a balance in technology. And I learned long ago, when many years ago we went to computers, and I was working someone on computers, and all of a sudden the computers died. And my employees initially sat back and said, "Can't do anything. Computers broke." No, get out your pencil, get out your paper, and continue on supporting our customers. It's finding a way. But the technology, we have to apply technology smartly. Sometimes we over technologize something that doesn't need much more than a stubby pencil and paper. But those things for learning, and I'm not a fan of home learning for schools. I'm in favor of parenting your children at home. But there's a socialization process that goes on for children in the schools, and they need to be in school. They need to be participating in committees and sports, in all these different activities that make them whole. And the other thing I want to do is we need to bring back phys ed. We need to bring back woodshop, home ec, and all those other ancillary things. And most importantly, in their last year, I want to make sure that every senior has a class on managing finances and how to interview for a job and how to get a job. If we don't do that for our high school seniors, we are failing. But first off, we got to get their scores up so they actually have the skills, knowledge, and ability to do the job.
Exactly. Now, what's the number in the state of Nevada for college preparedness? How many?
13%.
13%.
13%. That's criminal.
It is. Let me give you an example.
What did you tell me it was in Indiana?
In Indiana, the community that I came from in Indiana, our graduation rate is 98%. Okay. College proficiency, nearly 100%. 92% of all students from Zionsville High School go on to college and graduate. 92%, 98% graduation rate. Now, there's two things going on here. The school is well funded. That's number one. And number two is there's an expectation from the parents. Parents drive these kids. It's an affluent neighborhood. It's an affluent community. So they drive the kids. That's one of the biggest things that we see from teachers. We can't blame it all on the school system and all on the teachers. What's your expectation of getting parents involved and making parents part of this process in getting Nevada out of 50th place?
Well, I want to work with the parents. I think the parents, for the most part, are frustrated because they see the lackadaisical effort of the schools and their ability to help children learn. So I think we need to partner with the parents and maybe have some classes for those parents that are interested on how best they can help their children. And basically, if parents don't have the abilities or the time to help their children, then maybe there's a way for the schools to provide extra instruction so the children can get a leg up. I want our Nevada children to be nationally competitive for college or VOTEC or whatever pursuit they want in life. And I think that the schools ought to give them the opportunity to see what their choices are and things that they can do as a career.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the benefit that I had. I had a great education. I went to a school in Indianapolis by the name of Ben Davis High School, and graduated from there. They had a radio and TV program there. That's how I got into the business of broadcasting. But they also had all the VOTEC classes. You could get your pilot's license in high school. You could get certified SAE, and I don't know what the other one is, but you could leave high school and be certified to be a mechanic. You could get your first 2 years of your journeyman ship out of the way for plumbing and for the trades, electrical. You could learn how to frame a home. So when you graduated from high school, at least in 1982, 1983, back in the, when the dinosaurs were roaming, you had a skill that you could leave high school with and go make money. And some of these guys, I know that some of the guys that I graduated high school with that were in the plumbing area and the electrical area, those disciplines, they've gone on to run companies, become multimillionaires because of the class that they got in high school. They did not go on to college. Now, they went on to other vocational training to, for more licensing and so on. But that's what's needed. Tom, what role do you think that the vocational classes play now that we've seen that when you focus only on tech, you only focus on jobs that have a computer in front of you, that can be outsourced to anywhere else on the planet? How important are these jobs of plumbers, electricians, pilots, and so on?
Well, I look as a free country. A free country is about choice. We need to expose our children to as many options and choices as possible so they can choose what their passion is. I've heard so many stories about adults who have been in a job for 10, 15 years, and they're not happy. I want the Nevada children to pursue that line of education that's their passion and what makes them happy, whether it be technology with computers, whether it be being a plumber, which pays a lot of money, or an electrician, or a air conditioning mechanic, or on and on and on, framers of building. Whatever is in their passion, we need to expose them to so they can choose. Limiting to computers, certainly I advocate for every child in school to learn how to manipulate computers properly and effectively. But I'm more important that children have a chance to see what their choices in life are and what they can find their passion in. And when they find their passion, then they're going to be happy doing what they work on. And that's what I want for them. I found my passion. My passion was leading organizations and making them benchmark organizations in short order. That was my passion. I love working with people, but I love turning organizations around and making them benchmark organizations.
Well, what's really interesting is that there's a TikTok video that's going around, and it shows an older man massaging a beautiful young woman. And it's very, very sensual, and you've got the massage music, and all of a sudden a kid pops in that's like 21, 22 years old. And he goes, "No one told me this was a job on career day." My point is that these classes should expose students to new ways of learning and different things that are available. Again, like I said, Ben Davis High School, when I went there, was it was almost like a private, almost like a prep school. It was that we didn't wear uniforms and that type of thing, but anything that you wanted to do was available. Any kind of job or career that you wanted to go to was available. And they really pushed, again, I wish I'd gone into computers at that point. I didn't. I went into broadcasting. I've gone into computers since, but I wish I'd done it earlier. And would have been exposed to that. I had the opportunity. That's the kind of opportunity that Nevada needs. It's important that these children have an opportunity to see what the world offers. They don't think that they have any opportunity simply because they don't see anything in front of them. If you're living in a poor community, I came from a very poor community. My dad was a minister and we were raised very poor. So opportunity is really important. And it's what allowed me to blossom and build a career based solely on what I started with in high school. I started as a DJ in Indianapolis at 16. I was working on the radio in the 12th largest market in the country at 16. So Tom, would that be a success story that you would like to tell someday of somebody that came out of the system that you developed and says, because of what the Tom Heck administration did as governor, I now have a career?
Absolutely. I think that's the legacy any one person, any group of people, organization should be proud of, is the legacy they create for their children. Another key component of this education process is to make sure that we have adequate guidance counselors that can help children work through what they really want to be when they grow up. And guidance counselors sometimes get cut in short budget times, and we need to stop that. We need to start making sure that we're focusing children on life successes and not making them struggle when they get out and trying to be scared. One of the other things that we have in Nevada is the thing that bothers me most is that we have foster children and that are in organizations. And as soon as the state sees they turn 18, they dump them out the door. They don't give those children the experience in managing finances, finding a job, skill set. What are you going to do? They're just dumped from the system and they're on their own. That is criminal. And we need to somehow cover that particular group of people as well. I want to make sure we take care of them and allow them to be successful as well as the regular students in schools. But with their special needs and they need some special attention because they've had a hard road to hoe. And we want to help them as well.
Exactly. Okay. One of the questions that we get a lot about your candidacy, even though it's all over the website, and you state you're 100% and unapologetic about it. What's your position on abortion?
I'm unapologetically pro-life. Life is sacrosanct. I mean, that's one of the beauties of America. We've always had a high value for life. And that's just the bottom line. There's no other discussion with that other than that's where I stand, and that's where we're going to go. And my goal is to make us similar to some of these other states where we protect the child to at a certain level. And I'm going to look what their policies are to make sure that we are consistent with some of the other states.
Okay. Your position, you got a letter today. A lady who was really upset with you about your TV commercial because you chose to exercise a right, the Second Amendment right, in your TV commercial. And in these violent times, she didn't think that was acceptable. What's your position on the Second Amendment and this lady's letter today?
Well, certainly I'm a strong Second Amendment person, but I promised people on my website that I would absolutely be truth tell, and I wouldn't be focusing on political correctness. She's asking me to be politically correct, not doing it. My goal is to truth tell with the voters so they know exactly where I stand, and so that everything I say they can take to the bank. Second Amendment, what's most important to me, it's a right. Right now, we're making people who want to get concealed carry permits pay for that. Day one, Executive Order 1, we're going to stop that. No longer will Nevadans pay for that. While I'm working to get a constitutional carry through the system, that's where that will be. The second piece of that is that we have women who are stalked by former spouses. We have stalkers. We have these other people that are at risk. And what we're going to do is we're going to speed up the process with the sheriff to 5 days for that. And at the same time, during that 5 days, I'm going to task the sheriffs to protect those people until they get their concealed carry. Because I've heard too many stories where the woman got her concealed carry the day she was murdered, or if she was murdered and never got the concealed carry. That's unacceptable. I find that my job, most sacrosanct duty as governor, is to protect the lives of Nevadans. And I hold that dearly to heart. And we're going to do that. We're going to protect those people. They're not going to be stuck with some bureaucratic thing saying, well, we just didn't get the paperwork done. That's garbage. That'll stop. And then the third piece of that Second Amendment is that in these areas where they're going to have no gun zones, well, that's fine. We won't have citizens with guns, but we're going to require by executive order that all these agencies, wherever they have facilities or grounds, they're going to be required to provide armed protection for those people visiting their areas. And they're going to be held liable for that if they don't do it.
So even if they make it a gun-free zone and they do supply armed guards, if there's an incident that happens, would you still hold them liable for people there not being able to protect themselves if they're harmed?
Well, absolutely. Obviously, if there's a problem there, then they did not have adequate number of guards. When you have concealed carry with a lot of citizens, your numbers are probably closer to 10 to 20%. So if they don't have adequate protection, then they're stuck. Too bad, so sad. I don't have any sympathy for them. This is a constitutional right for people to protect themselves. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that they can do that, that no citizen will ever be stuck and not being able to defend themselves.
Okay. So another big question is we saw what happened here this last week with the House and the Senate and the new bill that they're looking at. And I think the Senate has passed it. I think that Biden's waiting to sign it. But it's red flag laws. It's all of these rules about the Second Amendment. What's your position on these federal mandates that are coming down? And how would you, as governor, deal with?
Well, first and foremost, those that are unconstitutional, I'm going to take the feds to court with the other governors, Abbott, DeSantis, Noem in South Dakota, and we're going to take them to court. And if you look at their record, they're losing almost every case they take to court. But these red flag laws, we have I think it's the 14th Amendment. It's called due process. You can't take somebody's weapons when they haven't had due process. And the problem is we have it happening right now. We have cops being called to people's houses to harass them when they say, well, he looks dangerous to me. Well, that's the same thing that's going to happen with weapons. He aggravated me. He looked funny at me. And I think you should go arrest him because he has a gun. And that's not going to happen under my watch.
Well, if anybody, I'm going to jump in. Tim Pool, who is a podcaster, has been swatted 9 times this year, meaning that the police have been called to his residence with the SWAT team coming in and going through his home. He also works out of this residence, but going through his home and forcing him out during the middle of a broadcast because he's being swatted. It's being used as a tool, a harassment tool, and the police have no way of dealing with it. These red flag laws are the exact same thing. Tom, talk about the AR-15 issue has become a big issue in this country. There's a lot of people who seem to think that an AR-15 is a military weapon. One word answer, is it?
Well, no, because it's semi-automatic.
Okay, that's enough. You answered it. No, it's not. Okay, so let me ask you this. How do you know that? What's your experience to be able to tell the American people and the people of Nevada that you can speak securely and confidently on what military is? What's the difference between you and the other guys in this race that you can speak on these intelligently and confidently? Why can you speak so confidently on military issues?
Well, I fired 9mm handguns. I fired the M16 on semi. I've also fired the M16 on automatic. I've fired the M60 machine guns, and I've practiced throwing grenades. So I understand these weapons. And
I guess the point I'm trying to make is you know about these weapons. Why? What experience did you go through in your early?
I was trained to use them. Every year I trained on those weapons. I mean, every year I did 9mm training, fired expert. Every year I trained M16, fired expert. So I understand these weapons. And the AR-15, they talk about assault rifles. Well, you have to find out what their definition is, because if an assault rifle is an automatic, then there are no civilian guns except in specially licensed categories that are machine guns or fire automatically. And so the AR-15 is no different than the 30-06, a deer rifle.
It's a 22. It's a fancy.
That's exactly what it is.
That's all it is. If you've got a 22 rifle, the 223-556 round that comes out of an AR-15 is the exact same round. As far as mass and everything, it's just a high velocity weapon. That's the only difference.
Exactly. I mean,
there's no difference.
We paint it black and it looks scary, so people say it's dangerous. Well, it's no dangerous than any other of the rifles that we have for deer hunting.
Okay, so let me ask you this: the federal government comes down and says that they're going to outlaw the AR-15. As governor of the state of Nevada, would you let that stand in your state? Would you come in and be an agent for the FBI or for the ATF to go into homes or to find people who have these weapons and take them from?
No, we're not doing this. It's a free country. And that's unconstitutional. It'll never survive the courts. We're not doing it in Nevada. The feds can come in, then I'll mobilize the National Guard and tell them to get the hell out of here. We're not doing that. We're going to protect the Second Amendment in Nevada. And there's no difference between they can pick any weapon and say that it's good, it's harmful. Well, they're designed to be harmful. They're designed to kill. They're weapons of choice for killing, because that's what their purpose is. And so to blame companies who build them, weapons don't kill people. People kill people.
Exactly.
And the only way you stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Exactly. And well, we see it time and time again. Right after the shooting in Uvalde, it overshadowed another shooting that I think was in West Virginia at a birthday party, where a man was told to leave because he was too drunk and being a nuisance. And so they asked him to leave. He left. He came back with an AR-15 and fired into the crowd. Luckily, there was a woman there that had a concealed carry. She fired her weapon. She pulled her weapon, fired her weapon, and killed him. That time it was a good gal with a gun.
Right. I stand corrected.
So the good gal with a gun is just as dangerous as the good guy with a gun. Now there's this move inside the liberal movement or the Democrat movement. We keep explaining these difference between guns, and I keep saying it. They're not listening. They don't care. They're on the emotion. So Tom, walk us through as governor. If illegal mandates come through from the federal government on any level that you deem, and your team of lawyers and so on deem as unconstitutional, you said you called the National Guard. Is there anything else that you would do to defend the rights of of Nevadans?
Well, certainly we would take the federal government to court to challenge them in court and quickly get a stay on that order. I can't believe that they would get away with doing that, but if they tried, that's what we would do, and immediately go to the Ninth Circuit to get a stay of that order. So we can't have unconstitutional mandates from the federal government. And right now, in the last year, we've had so many of those, and every single one is getting overturned in the courts. So we're going to do everything possible to protect our rights here in Nevada from overreaching government.
Okay, we'll move from federal mandates to local mandates. As governor, if there was another pandemic outbreak, as governor, what would you do? What tact would you take? Would you follow the DeSantis Nome tack, or would you follow California's or Nevada's last process? Would you institute mandates for anyone at any level for any reason?
Well, we're not going to be stupid like California. For years and years, centuries and centuries, we've always said, and I've heard it over and over again, that medical issues are between a doctor and the patient. And under my administration, that's exactly where they'll stay, with the patient and the doctor. There's no reason for it to be anywhere else. And the government has no right or no reason to be involved in those decisions that are personal between a patient and their doctor. And that's sacrosanct in my book.
What about vaccine mandates? Would you stand up against the federal government for vaccine mandates of any kind?
Well, absolutely. I mean, everybody now we're walking on eggshells as we try to talk about that so that we don't get blocked on Facebook or blocked on Twitter. But the bottom line is, we are not going to force people to take medicine. They need to talk to their doctor, and the patient and their doctor get to decide what medicine, what vaccines, and what the risks are. And then the two of them decide. No role for government in that at all. And we tell patients what their risks are. And when we tell them what their risks are and what our recommendation is, then they can go home and talk to their doctor and decide which things they want to do or not do. And that's up to them and their doctor.
Well, similar to recommended speeds on the highway, right? Somebody enters the highway, they're entering at their own risk. They know that they can go faster, they can go slower. These are the recommended speeds. These are the speed limits. But if they go faster and they have a wreck, well, then it's on them, right? Same kind of mentality, right? Your life is a risk. So the state shouldn't be coming in and telling you how to live your life, correct? I mean, that's basically what you're saying.
Well, we've got too much government involved in too many things in our lives,
Agreed.
and we need less of it. The other thing I talk about is cutting regulations. We're going to cut 3 regulations for every one. We're going to cut taxes. We have an overbearing government in Nevada, along with an overbearing federal government that is out of control right now. We need to stop that.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Day one, you come in. We've talked about the budget. What do you do with the budget on day one?
10% budget cut across the board. And the reason we do that, if you understand the process of things, is that you do that because when you have a whole bunch of failing programs, those tend to fall out when you do a cut. And we want those programs that are failing, that are fraudulently wasting money, we want them out. And if the legislature wants them back, I'm fine for them to start over and produce a program that works for the people. But we can't continue to fund programs that fail. The other piece of that is for the accountability, which is everything I'm about, is I'm going to establish an Office of Inspector General. The Office of Inspector General will be charged with rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse in Nevada government. And they're going to also have the responsibility for taking suggestions from employees of the state government, from local governments, and from citizens. Anywhere that we can save money in Nevada, we're going to get that process to a high enough level because they're going to work directly for me with the power of the governor, and we're going to implement those savings because of their inputs. And that's what the Office of Inspector General will do. And we're going to basically start saving Nevada's money, their taxpayers' money, and make sure that we're judicial stewards of their funds as they give them to us, and make sure that they're taken care of properly.
Well, in a recent article that you were in the Las Vegas Sun, the journalist there said that you were incorrect, that there's already an Office of OIG. Can you correct that? What's going on?
Well, yeah, she just quickly looked online and found that there's the only Office of Inspector General. She found it. It was in prisons. Well, but it's an Office of Inspector General strictly for the prisons. There is no statewide OIG, Office of Inspector General. We will have them on my term in January.
And you got to clarify this, because we had to do this with her twice to get this clarified. There is an Office of OIG in the state of Nevada for prisons, but it's not run by the state of Nevada. It's run by the Office of Inspector General out of DC. It's a federal program, has nothing to do with Nevada other than it's in Nevada prisons. So this is our journalism today. We've got an issue with misinformation.
That's federal overreach is what I would call it. Why are the feds involved in Nevada prisons?
Well, because it's a federal prison. It has to be a federal prison. And there's a reason there. I can't remember what it is. It's a law, but it had to do with the criminality. If you remember the movie Brubaker that Robert Redford was in, where they were finding corruption inside the prison systems, where they were using the prisoners for forced labor, all that type of thing. That's what it's for. It's to maintain that doesn't happen inside the prisons. Because we need that, because people are corrupt. They get inside and they think, well, I can justify this for myself. Tom, have you seen people around the state of Nevada justifying things that they wouldn't normally do? But you know what? I earned it. I deserve it. Do you see that happen?
Well, absolutely. This is probably one of the most corrupt states that I've been in. And it basically functions as the good old boy system. People in the state government, they hire their friends, their buddies, hopefully not as smart as they are, because they don't want to be overshined. And it's just a mess. I have never seen such a mess in my entire life as in Nevada. You go to the Midwest, the bureaucracies are competent. They support the taxpayer. They support the citizens. They get things done. We're paralyzed in Nevada. And especially, some of these programs that are huge, like Health and Human Services, where they got 3/4 of the budget. We need to figure out where that money's going and make sure that we're using it wisely. But it's a problem in Nevada.
Not only that, but there was money that came through during the pandemic that came from the state, and that money is missing, correct? There's a ton of money missing from that.
Right. It's still, some of it's missing and some of it hasn't been spent, and they can't figure out how to spend it because they don't know what they're doing.
Okay, so as governor, what do you do with that money? You come in on day one. How do you start spending that money that's sitting?
Well, first off, you always look for what it can be spent for. Obviously, we want to spend it on things that improve things in Nevada. So I think the first thing I would do is I'd go out to the departments and determine what kind of things could we buy for them that would save Nevada taxpayers money in net. The net, that basically when you do all the puts and takes, which things could we buy for state departments that would net us a savings for the state and taxpayers. That's what I would focus on with that money. And if there's strict purposes for it that I don't see the need for, then we're not going to use it. We're not going to use it for COVID anymore. We're past COVID. So we're going to figure out those things that will support based on their rules. Feds always have strings attached to everything they give you.
Well, what's interesting is that there's been a ton of talk in the country about the fall elections. And security for the fall elections. We've seen issues with Pennsylvania. We've seen issues, I think there were some issues in New Jersey with their elections. Are you expecting it to be as smooth around here in Nevada? Do you think that they have qualified people in, or what would you call for voters to do? Would you call for them to be more involved?
Well, first and foremost, as you've mentioned, I've self-funded most of this campaign. So I have a parochial interest in this, but what I've seen, there's a lot of training that has been going on for tomorrow and for November. They've been training people on election integrity, what to look for, what to watch for, how to position themselves, who they're seeing, and basically making sure that it's a fair election. I think the other piece of it is I support the election integrity group that's been going around the country and talking about things. One of the things they do is go back to paper ballot. I absolutely support paper ballots. The election integrity group, the paper ballots have watermarks and they have serial numbers like watermarks as well. And the other piece of it is doing away with the machines, strictly paper. One of the things that I also like to add is that I want to make sure that our election supervisors in the various counties in Nevada are right now appointed by a bureaucrat. I want to make sure that the voters get to hold the election supervisors accountable. So I want to propose that we make those election supervisors elected in elections every 4 years, so that basically the voters can decide if they're happy with what's going on in their election office.
One of the biggest concerns is transparency with the elections. What would you do as governor to increase the transparency of the election process in the state of Nevada?
Well, one of the things that that it's done typically in the military is we always develop lessons learned. We had big exercises in Korea that I remember, 35,000 people. And at the end of the exercise, after everybody's on their way back, but before they left, the key people got together and figured out what things worked, what things didn't work, and what were the lessons learned. We want to do the same things for Nevada elections. And we're going to go back to 2020, develop a list of lessons learned, and those that can be quickly implemented, we'll do. If we find criminal if we find criminal actions, we'll take appropriate action there. But we'll do the same thing in 2022. We'll do spot checks. 24, 26. We'll make sure that when people know that somebody's checking on them, they're more likely to make sure they're following their processes and have detailed processes that people understand and can systematically follow, so that our elections are fair and protect our democracy for Nevadans.
Well, why are you so locked into process? Why are you such a big believer in process? What does process do?
Well, process makes sure you're successful each and every time. I mean, how many of you, if I take you into a fighter jet, stick you in the cockpit, can start that baby up? I bet you none of it. Well, how do they do it? Well, they have a checklist. It's called a -1. And it's you press button here for this, you press button 2. And of course, if you have a co-pilot, they regurgitate that button 1 successfully, button 2. So it's basically making sure that you're successful each and every time that you do something with that particular function or process. And that's why it's so important. Checklists are the key to doing the same things over and over. For recovery, for recovering from hurricanes, from damages. I had a book this big, 3, 4, 5 inches thick of checklists for various eventualities that we plan for. We have a power failure in Sparks at building such and such. Well, we go to the checklist, and we go, call Joe, call John, send this group out, send that group out. And that makes sure you're successful each and every time, because you can't always remember all these things, especially under pressure, when it's a crisis, when people's lives and property are at risk. You got to quickly go to the list and know what to do and get it going.
Another big issue for the citizens of Nevada is water. What's your plan for the water issue, and how do you intend to deal with California?
Well, with water issue, it's Nevada Resources. You can't do one without the other. If you do water, you got to talk about electricity. Right now, the state of California, because they're stupid, they have 17 dams approved. 2 of them are funded, but the water board won't let them construct it because they could, for whatever various reasons. But 5 years ago, we had 800 inches of snow. 1 trillion gallons went through that system right down into the Pacific Ocean. Had we had that, we would have been able to, California, had they had it, but would have been able to cover almost 5 years and that's the typical cycle for droughts in Nevada. We get strong snow for 2 or 3 years, and then we have 4 or 5 years of drought. And if we had that water, they wouldn't have to be taking more than their fair share out of the Colorado River, and they wouldn't have to be buying electricity from Nevada, because that could have been hydropower dams, clean energy that they could have had. The other piece is I'm going to sue California for building those dams. I'm suing them to build more desalination plants where they need it. San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and let them take the water from the Pacific Ocean. There's billions and billions of gallons there they can take, and they wouldn't have to take water from the Colorado River. They need to get off of our resources. And for power and water that we're providing to California, if we're providing any, we're going to charge tariffs on their water and power because they can't keep sucking our resources when they're stupid. And that's all I can say. We're going to have an army of lawyers working California issues.
Well,
I'm fed up with that.
One of the biggest things against your campaign that people say is they don't think you're electable in the fall. They don't think that you can beat Sisolak. What do you say against that?
That's pretty funny. Sisolak won't compare to me and the things I've done. He probably only wished he could do. I mean, all that Sisolak has ever been is a commissioner. He has no clue. He has no clue that you have to run an organization. You got to be with the organizations, i.e., you got to be in the governor's mansion up here with where the people are, where the legislatures are. And he spends all his time in Las Vegas. He basically took away Nevada's freedoms by shutting down businesses, mandating masks, mandating vaccines. Oh, by the way, he only did that 2 weeks after Newsom did it in California. So he doesn't have a creative idea in his head, and that's an easy one. I'm going to coast on that one. Beating Sisolak, that's the least of my worries. I'm looking forward to all you voters tomorrow voting for me so that we can get on with taking our state back and our country.
We're ready to do it. It's time. We're
time.
looking at what the new numbers that just came out this week for the economy, with Nevada being a heavy tourist-based state. What would your push be, or your position be, to get to diversify the business arena here in the business environment here in the state of Nevada?
Well, some of these candidates for governor saying they're going to create jobs. I don't know of any governor that's ever created a job. What you got to do is you got to create an environment that's business friendly. Well, how do you do that? You lower the taxes and you eliminate those stupid regulations that make it difficult to do things. One of the ones that's really heartburn for me, I don't know if those of you that are practicing real estate, I really in your corner, you guys have to pay like almost $1,500 to be able to work. That is criminal. We're going to do away with that as quickly as I can find a way to do away with that. You pay taxes on everything you make, but they're going to take another $1,500 out of your pocket? I don't think so. That's got to stop. But that's just typical of overreaching regulations because Nevadans want more and more money. The legislature bureaucrats want more and more money. I talked to a bureaucrat one time, and I was interested in finding out how they determine when to cut a program. When I talked to them, they said, "What? We don't cut programs. We just determine how much more money we're going to take from the taxpayer, go back into their pocket for." That's criminal, unacceptable.
Exactly.
We're cutting things that aren't working.
Well, that's the biggest difference between Republicans and Democrats. Democrats gauge the success of a program on how many people are on it. How many people can we help? Republicans, on the other hand, are saying, listen, how many people can we help get off of these programs to where they don't have to use them anymore? There's a big difference in the way, the mentality, the ideology there on how you work at it. When you say, listen, we want to help people get off of these programs and lead a productive life without these programs. Democrats say, well, you want to pull the money from them. You don't want them to be able to help themselves. What do you say to that, Tom? When we're trying to get people off these programs, not discontinue the programs, but move people past them. Are we going to be able to do that with the current administration in DC? And if those policies come down to the state of Nevada, how does it affect the state of Nevada?
Well, first and foremost, we all know the story of if you give someone a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach someone a fish, he eats for a lifetime. And so my goal with all these programs is to basically, people sometimes need a leg up. During COVID, people needed unemployment. Of course, our dealers are the people who give out money for unemployment, failed miserably. Nevadans didn't get the money they needed when they needed it, and that's got to stop. But basically, we need to focus on making programs, making people successful. People ought to be able to have a productive life after they start in a program and finish a program. If you're unemployed, then maybe you need education, maybe you need to go to school, whatever it is that needs to help you get a leg up, because it's all about making people's lives better where they live, work, and play. And I don't care what DC does. I mean, we take their money. Well, they say that, but it's our money. We're paying taxes to the feds a big time.
Exactly.
I mean, most of us are paying,
exactly,
I don't know, 10, 15, 20% taxes or more. And so it's not money that they're giving us. They're giving our money back to us, and people need to understand that. And when they're misusing our money, I'm just going to create a big stink. And I'm going to have a huge bully pulpit when I'm government. And if they're not going to like what I'm saying about how they're doing business when it's failing miserably, and that's typically what happens with the federal program.
Well, exactly, because they're too far away. My dad, when he was a minister, he always said that, it was good to be the minister because you got to see who of your flock was actually participating, right? You'd have the family that would show up on Sunday and they'd say, Brother Kramer, we just don't have any food in the house. And this is back in the 70s. We don't have any food in the house, and we won't be able to feed the kids. And so my dad and people in the church would get together and they get some, food together, and they got it and took it to the family, and then they didn't see them until the food ran out. Then they came back to church. Dad said, no, you don't get that the second time. At some point, you have to cut people off. What's your position on that, Tom? How do you get people off these programs and do a soft push to where you can diminish the programs, utilize it for people who really need it, as opposed to people that are grifters? How do you do that in the state of Nevada?
Well, it's the same thing. I would put them in classes where they develop goals and objectives and a vision for their future, because people that are stuck like that don't have a vision for their future. And when they have a vision for their future, because this is the land of opportunity, it's always been, America's been the land of opportunity. And when you get that into the people's head that that's true, then we'll find a way to educate them in what they want to do. Because to spend money on a lifetime to support someone is not what America is about. It's about America helping Americans be the best they can be. And that's an Army saying, but we want Nevadans to be the best they can be. And we want to provide them the education, the structure, the help and assistance that they need. That's why it's so important for education, so that we give them a leg up. We want to make sure when they go out into the Nevada economy, they've already had these basic skills,
right,
and that we just build upon them to get them into an area where they can have their passion and they can raise a family and be successful in life.
So if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying, would you advocate for a lifetime limit of benefits to a person from the state of Nevada that once they've hit that threshold, that they're done, they no longer receive benefits? Would that solve one of these problems where the people that once they run out of their benefits, they'd have to leave the state and go someplace else? Is that something you'd advocate for?
Well, what I would advocate is I would advocate for programs that have outcomes.
Well, I guess you're missing my point. You're missing my point. My question is, there's going to be a certain group of people, no matter how many programs or how many opportunities that you hand them, just will not comply. They're not going to be a part of the system. They're always going to choose to do the least amount possible. At some point, do we cut them off?
Well, at some point, they're on their own. I absolutely agree with that. What that point is, we have to look at it, but you give them the opportunities and you help them the best way they can. And if they're basically doing it because they choose not to, well, then they're on their own. But if they don't meet the milestones in a program, that's typically what you do. You establish milestones. They don't meet the milestones, they're out. And if they're out of the program, then they're cut off from subsistence.
We get about 5 minutes left here, Tom. The election's tomorrow. This is your last opportunity to talk to anyone that's listening about why you want to be governor, why you think that you're the guy for the job. That Steve Sisolak is a placed not Steve Sisolak. I'm sorry, Joe Lombardo is a placed candidate. He was the establishment pick. There's a lot of reasons for that. Why do you think that you're the guy for the job? You got 5 minutes. Take it.
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy. I sit here and I look back for the last 40 years. Nevadans have voted for the chosen one, the career politician, the supposedly strong conservative who turned out to be a liberal. This is a different paradigm. Isn't it time for all of you to vote for someone who's different, someone who hasn't have that pedigree of hopping through the political hoops that people think are important? Why don't you hire someone that really knows what they're doing? In the military, what was most magnificent about the military is that everybody was mission focused. What does that mean to you? It means that we were always about results. I didn't get promoted for trying and fighting like some of these candidates say. I got promoted for results, and getting promoted for results is what it's about. And for Nevadans, producing results as a governor is what it's about. I mean, go back and look. What have these other politicians produced for you? A stadium? How did that help you? Well, if you go to the games, it costs you an extra 50% on your rental car. It costs you an extra 50% on your room tax. That's not the kind of thing Nevadans need. You need someone who's going to be your advocate. You need someone who's going to jump into the Nevada state government and make it effective, efficient, and responsive to you, the voter. That's what I will bring to this state. I will fix things that are broken. I will eliminate programs that are failing. I will make our education teach children and focus on children learning outcomes as opposed to spending money on willy-nilly things that don't matter. And I will provide paths for children that help them find their passion in life so they can be successful. I'm the guy that's not afraid to cut the budget. It's not afraid to take on the career politicians who keep saying no and who keep getting in the way. I will be the biggest, strongest speaker out there to defend your freedom of speech, your Second Amendment. Everywhere we go that there's issues of that in Nevada, I will be there with a cadre of press to protect your rights. And I will have an army of lawyers taking anyone that's challenging or taking away your rights. We're going to take them to court and we're going to stop it. That's unacceptable. I ask you to tell your friends, if you like my story and my message, tell your friends to vote Tom Heck for governor. If you have any doubts, go to electheck.com, electheck.com. You have any questions, call me. The number's on the screen. I will revolutionize politics. I will revolutionize government Nevada. You will be amazed at what I will do in 10 years, in 2 years. In 2 years, we will fix these problems that should have been fixed 40 years ago, that politicians and career bureaucrats and career politicians have failed. It is unconscionable. It's criminal. We can do better, and you will do better with me. Please vote for me tomorrow, and we'll together take back the state and our country. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Thanks for your time. God bless America. God bless Nevadans, and God bless all of you.
There you go. Tom Heck, the man with the plan. Again, tomorrow is the day to go vote here in the state of Nevada. If you're looking for something different, if you're looking for a candidate that is not tied to the establishment, Tom has been back out of retirement. He was living a comfortable life. Sound familiar? We need more people like this. We need more people that are leaders, that have led before, have gone through the process, know what they're doing, and aren't just establishment people being placed by the politically elite and the politically connected. It's time that we start going to these grassroots candidates. Tom Heck is a grassroots candidate. He self-funded this. He didn't ask for any money from anybody. He did get some contributions, but they paled in comparison to what he spent, because he believes in the country. He believes in the state of Nevada that much that he thought that he had to put his name in the ring. It's these type of people, grassroots people, that you can look to, and you know that their background isn't tied to a career of being connected with career politicians, lobbyists, and so on. It's time to take our state back. It happens with people that are not connected. There you go. That's all I have to say. If you like what Tom had to say, go check out more. You can do it at electtech.com. You can also go to his YouTube page, information there, Facebook as well. We invite you to come in and take a look at everything that we have to say and do. Again, electheck.com. That's it for tonight. I appreciate you jumping in with us. And it's great that tomorrow is going to be the election. If you're ready for it, you know we are. Vote for Tom Heck tomorrow.
Thank you for being a part of the Tom Heck Digital Town Hall, where Tom is giving the people of Nevada their voices back. Join Tom every Monday night at 7 p.m. as he discusses his plans for Nevada directly with you, the people of Nevada. Do you still have questions? Call Tom directly, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at 775-393-0500. That's 775-393-0500. And yes, Tom actually answers his phone. If you'd like to join the Tom Heck for Governor campaign as a volunteer, to make a donation, or both, please visit electtech.com. Thank you again for being a part of Democracy in Action, and only on the Tom Heck Digital Town Hall. Mark your calendar now and plan to join Tom again next Monday night at 7 at electtech.com, as well as these video streaming platforms.